that good? Yep.
Well, it's a challenge, and the reality is a lot of programming that's not live, streaming, but it's people are changing their viewing habits and how they're viewing, and what they're viewing, and when they're viewing. We know our challenge from a TV station needs to be continue to provide stuff that you can't get anywhere else. So a lot of that is local content. So with news, for instance, you can't get that on. You can get it from a different source.
How does it affect, whether somebody's getting it through cable feed or the digital antenna? Your content stays the same.
Right.
But the advertising is what you guys have to maintain. That source.
But because we've been so in tune with growing our local website for local content, that's really just such a small portion of what we're talking about today.
But it's awesome in the room. I'm sorry to stop talking in the network. I want to welcome you all on behalf of the Ben Chamber. Thank you for being here today. My name is Robin. I am the Senior Vice President of Programs and Events at the Ben Chamber. So, like I said, the energy was really awesome in here. It's a kind of a small little room, but I actually kind of liked it because we're a little more intimate. So, anyway, I want to do a couple little housekeeping things. If everyone would please remember to silence your cell phones. If you don't know, the restrooms are to the left and just right over here around the corner. A few thank yous. I want to thank KTVZ, please, for being here today. We really appreciate their time with us. I want to thank Combined Communications. They are one of our media sponsors. We also have Ben Broadband and Ben Radio Group. All of these people, without them, we would not be able to get the word out to all of you. So a big thank you to all of you. We really appreciate you. Also, we want to thank U.S. Bank. They are a title sponsor for a lot of our events. And with that, I'm going to introduce Jared, and Jared's going to introduce our speakers. So thank you all for being here.
How are you guys?
Excellent.
Good, food's great. Thank you for being here, obviously. U.S. Bank is really happy to sponsor these types of events, and it's always a pleasure for me to get to come out and see, the turnout for these things. This one, I've told a couple people already, it's a little bit different for me because we typically go to an event and you see a lot of bankers, and this one is definitely not geared towards bankers. So I feel like I'm a little bit out of my element here, but I'm excited to get to hear what Ken has to say. Prior to coming up here, I tried to do a little research on Ken and see what I could find for information before introducing him. And it turned out that we ended up going to school at the exact same time together. I just had never met him, but I'm certain by the fact that he went to Oregon State, go Beavs, that you're going to hear some really great stuff. So anyway, without further ado, here's Kent. Kent, he has spent, I guess 6 years. He spent a little time with ReachLocal and Yahoo. And just really excited to hear what he has to say. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Since Oregon State can't get much success on the field, at least they have something going for them. Our business school must be doing much better than the football team. Yeah, definitely want to thank KTVZ, who's a partner with Simpli.fi, the company I'm with, and the Ben Chamber for letting us have this event here. And also all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to sit and listen in on this. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll at least have a couple little tidbits that you'll be able to right away start integrating into your advertising strategy. And beyond Yahoo and ReachLocal on the digital side, I actually started in advertising and radio up in Portland with KXL and the game, so spoken word format. So very familiar with the local landscape and some of the challenges that local business owners face as well. And so yeah, I've been with Simpli.fi since January. And if you're not familiar, we're really a technology company. We're what's called a programmatic platform. And what it's built to do is reach highly targeted audiences across multiple formats, including display, banner advertising, video, as well as social and mobile. I know there's a lot of companies out there that are bringing new products to you all the time. But one of the big things that sets us apart is that we're really the only platform out there that's built specifically for local advertising. So, we're partnered with companies like KTVZ, but we actually have, go back here. We're actually partnered with about 220 local media companies across the country, and currently managing about 15,000 campaigns. So if you can imagine, that's a lot of expertise about how to manage, media campaigns at a local level. So we'll get more into that a little bit, but first, I want to touch on some points on really why you should care about targeted display. So let's take a little look at the media forecast. So what we're looking at here is a 5-year forecast for media trends. And you can see the total media growth that we're looking at is about 3.6% per year. Traditional is a little bit lower. If you just were looking at TV, it'd be much higher than that. But the biggest area that we're seeing growth right now is on online media. And that's probably not a huge surprise to you. Obviously, people are spending more and more time online, and that's where a lot of advertising dollars are shifting, right? And within online media, because again, I know there's a lot of different digital products out there. You've got search, social, display advertising, review sites. But one of the fastest growing areas within online media is really targeted display. So, right now, this year, it's seeing about 15% growth. Next year, it's looking at about 20% growth. But this is a $10 billion industry already right now. So, if you can imagine, hopefully you're doing some sort of targeted display out there. But if you're not, chances are your competitors are, and hopefully you will be too. So, might be a good time to start looking into it. So, anyone familiar with this guy, David Ogilvy? Kind of known as the father of all advertising. One of his big principles was that successful advertising is based on information about its consumer, right? Based on information about the consumer. And what he's really talking about is that old saying, right? The right audience, the right message, at the right time. And I'm sure you've heard of this before. The biggest example of getting that information about the user online is, right, the search engine. Anyone remember when the search engine looked like this? Search engine results page, also known as a SERP. And even that's come a long way, right? Now when I do a search for best breakfast in Bend, you've got all these different images on here, reviews, ratings, and it's also packed with a lot of competition though too, right? There's a lot of different advertisers on that. So I'm not trying to discredit search because it is important. Your potential customers are doing more research about you online before they ever come to you than they ever have before. But how much time do you really actually spend on this page? Anytime you do a search? Seconds, right? So let's say 10 seconds, and that's being pretty liberal, right? And how many searches are you going to do in a day? Maybe like 5 to 10, right? So you're usually looking at about less than 2 minutes of your time spent online being on this search engine results page, right? Does anyone spend less than 2 minutes a day online? Maybe, but chances are, the average adult these days is spending just under 6 hours a day online, especially if you're in an office environment where you're usually by your computer all day. So this is where people are spending their time, on your local news sites, whether that's on a desktop or now on mobile devices, on YouTube, Twitter, obviously social media is a huge one. This is where people are spending their time across the rest of the internet, not just on that search engine results page, right? So if you're putting all of your digital marketing eggs in that search basket, then you're missing out on the largest opportunity to get in front of them when they're across all these thousands of websites. And that's what we're talking about today, how to target your potential customers across the rest of the internet. So I'm going to go into a few examples here about what targeted display advertising looks like to me. So I like to do quite a bit of mountain biking in my free time. Was fortunate enough this summer to ride over here in Bend too, up at Bachelor, and also a trail called Flagline. And so here I am on a mountain biking website, and you can see at the bottom there's an advertisement from Sun Valley, right? Huge ski resort, but in this case, they're targeting me with ads about mountain biking. You can see there's a couple people on there. And that's really contextually relevant because I'm on a site that's about mountain biking, right? So this is a really good ad. Great job, Sun Valley. Here's another example. Here I'm reading about the Portland Trail Blazers. Actually, the season starts tomorrow night, if anyone didn't know that yet. So. And you can see at the bottom right here, Sheraton. I was on their site, a few days ago. I do a lot of traveling, so I'm always looking at, booking hotels. And they want to get back in front of me and make sure that, if I haven't booked already, that I'm booking with them. And if I haven't yet already, I should be upgrading to Sheraton Club, joining the rewards program, right? So good example of site retargeting. They're wanting to get back in front of me there. And then here I am on Facebook, and again, it's kind of scattered there, but you can see in the bottom right, Sheraton Hotels and Resorts. It's like they're following me around, stalking me wherever I go, right? And you can also see on here, Target. They're serving me ads for a car seat and travel system, as well as a nursery gear. And I'm not having a baby anytime soon. I hope not.
They clearly know a lot about you.
I know. I do. More than I knew. No, but my best friend actually. Oh no. That'd be a bad way to find out. That actually happened to me during Christmas. I was shopping for gifts for her, and then she was on my computer, and she started seeing all these ads for the things she was asking about. So be careful with that. Very careful. But my best friend last week had a baby. So before his baby shower, I was doing all this, searching for all these things that were on their wish list. And even though I hadn't gone to Target, they were able to pick up some of the searching that I was doing, and they're going to serve me ads for car seats and nursery gear and all that. So even though I'm not the one having the baby, they knew that I was shopping for that kind of gear, so they're going to serve me ads for there. So you guys have probably experienced this before, right? So you've been shopping online, and then all of a sudden you start seeing those ads everywhere, right? Anyone have an example they want to use? I shared all mine. No, that's fine. But it's almost like they're stalking you, right? You start seeing them everywhere. But the reality is you see thousands of ads every day, right? So the reason that it seems like they're stalking you is because you're noticing them because they're relevant to you, right? You see thousands of ads, but you really notice those ones that are going to be most relevant to you. And the reason for that is something that's called the reticular activating system. I love including this because it's so fun to say. Reticular activating system. And it's the part of your brain that's paying attention when you're not paying attention. So has anyone bought a new car sometime this year, recently? What'd you buy?
It was a CRV.
A CRV? The CRV?
Yeah.
And the minute you drive it off the lot, you start seeing them everywhere.
Everywhere. My year, make, and model.
Right. And you're like, oh, I'm going to be the first person in town with this car. And then all of a sudden you start seeing them everywhere. Because that's relevant to you now, right?
It was funny, my roommate, my friend actually said, oh, I don't think anyone drives this one. You might want to get a Subaru.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. I got it anyhow, and sure enough, I saw Billy, he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. You pick that up because your brain's paying attention and looking for CRVs even though you're not. And it's like when you're in a crowded room and you're not paying attention, all of a sudden your name gets called, you perk up. It's because of that. It's called that reticular activating system. So again, it's because that's relevant information to you. And you notice those ads because, again, it's that right audience, right, at the right time with the right message. And all of a sudden, you're going to be picking up on those. So Sun Valley, Sheraton Hotels, Target, those are all brands that are using display advertising extremely effectively. But those are some pretty big brands, right? And for a long time, this kind of technology has been used by larger companies, but it's through a partnership with companies like KTVZ that now on the local level, you can run that kind of ads too. So going into the different types of targeting out there, the first one we're going to talk about today is site retargeting. And you're probably familiar with this. This is just when you visit a particular website, and then once you leave, you're going to start seeing ads from that website to follow you around and bring you back, right? So we're going to go into a little bit of a lengthier example of this using Dr. Cobb, who's a pediatric dentist, right? And he's got his website, And it's a great looking website, obviously very kid friendly because he's a pediatric dentist and he's doing some search engine marketing, some AdWords. He's also got a Facebook page, so he's when people connect with him, he can stay in there. And then he's also got word of mouth, right? So this is how he's driving traffic to his website right now, right? The scary part that is, this is a stat from Google AdWords blog actually, that about 97% of the people that come to your site are going to leave without ever taking an action though, right? And I'm sure you do it all the time. You go and you visit a lot of different sites, but you're not calling them right away or buying anything right away, right? You leave because you get distracted or it just, you're interested but it wasn't quite the right time. So of that number of people that leave, only about 8% of them actually ever come back to that site, right? But if you're doing site retargeting, you're serving them ads, trying to get them to come back, and that number actually goes up to 28%. So a little bit more clear way to say that is that you'll triple the amount of returning traffic to your site using site retargeting, because you're giving them a reason to come back, especially if you're using things like special offers, right? Really driving them. So, once someone leaves that site and they're on TMZ or any sort of news site, Dr. Cobb wants to be able to get his ads out there and bring that person back into the site to obviously book an appointment there. The problem is though with site retargeting is you're still only reaching that audience who's already been to your site. So what if you're a small local business that doesn't have a whole lot of traffic to their site right now? Only a few users or something like that. You need to go out and build an audience, right? You need to be able to go out and find more people to start driving to your site. And we do that in a couple ways. The first is with search retargeting. So this is targeting users who are searching your products or services. So in this example, you've got a young mother and she's on a few different sites here: Discovery, Fit and Health, Baby Center, WebMD or About.com, and maybe she did a Google search about parenting tips and then found one of these sites that she likes. And she's starting to search things like, when should kids start flossing? Tips for helping your kids floss. So based off these kind of searches, what could you say about her?
She's looking for dental hygiene for her kids.
Right. She's interested in dental hygiene for her kids, right? She's not necessarily looking for a pediatric dentist at this time, but she's obviously interested in the health of her kids' teeth. So is that someone who Dr. Cobb wants to be in front of? She's not searching for him yet, but does he want to get in front of her if she's doing these kind of searches? Absolutely. So now when she's on parenting blogs and other websites, even though she hasn't been to his website and isn't even yet looking for a pediatric dentist, Dr. Cobb is able to get his ad in front of her because she's doing these types of searches related to dental hygiene for kids. So that's search retargeting. The last type of targeting that we're talking about here is keyword contextual targeting. And this is a great way to get in front of a user before they even do a search like that, right? Because this is actually going to be based off content that they're reading that's related to your product or service. So, for example, here's an example of contextual targeting. You're on parents.com, and that's a great placement for Dr. Cobb because he wants to get in front of any parents, right? And in this example, the article on parents.com is, when should my child start flossing her teeth? So it makes even more sense because, what if you were a parent on there and you're looking up information about your kids having a fever, right? Then does a pediatric dentist make sense for that page? Maybe a little bit because it's a parent, but what if it was a site like howstuffworks.com, right? That site has nothing to do with parenting, it's just about how things work. But this particular article within howstuffworks.com is talking about kids flossing, right? And our technology knows that, hey, not only is it it's not a parenting website, but this page in particular is talking about kids flossing, so this is going to be a great place to place that ad. I bring that up because a lot of companies out there doing this type of display advertising, they might target categories like parenting.com, but they're not able to go down to the actual keyword contextual level here, where you're actually going, we know that this particular article is talking about kids flossing. So that way we can make sure that the content on the page is most relevant to that user. So again, we've talked about the three kinds of retargeting here: site retargeting, search retargeting, and keyword contextual targeting. And again, this is all about getting the right audience with the right message at the right time. That's how we do effective advertising. So, anyone have any questions at this point? I know I kind of went through that kind of quickly, but everything makes sense so far.
What's the technology that allows you to get down to that level? So what is it that's driving? So you're basically similar to the search engine optimization where you're looking for those keywords that's finding in there. What is it that's allowing you to get there?
I was doing this because that was such a nice soft pitch.
Yeah.
A2, how does it work?
We really planned this.
Yeah.
It's an Oregon State thing, yeah. So you can kind of see it on here, but I always like including this little photo here because when I'm explaining it, it kind of feels like you're pulling the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz, right? And revealing that it's not some sorcery, that it's really just a guy behind there pulling the levers. So pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But in digital, that kind of, when we talked about successful advertising being based off the information about the user, right? And in digital, that information is what we call data, right? You probably heard that term thrown around a lot these days, big data. It's kind of a buzzword, but the way that works for most companies out there is that they're collecting that data from web publishers, content providers, and vertical search engines. So that could be a news site, that could be like about.com where someone's doing that search. There's companies that are usually collecting that data that are, they're called data brokers, third-party data brokers. And there's a few examples on there, Blue Kai, Datonix, and Exelate. And what they do is they take all that data, so those searches that you're doing and things that you're reading, and they package that into an audience segment, also known as a behavioral target. Is that word? People have probably heard that before, behavioral target. The issue with that our company found is that they call them black box audience segments, and you say, well, why is that user in that segment? And they'll say, well, that's kind of our secret sauce. We don't want to tell you that part. The reality is it's because they don't know. They're buying that segment through a third party, so they don't know, was it a keyword that person searched? They don't know, was it an article that they read? And how long ago was that? Did they search that thing 30 days ago, 5 days ago? They're buying it through a third party, so they don't have that kind of access to that kind of data. So Simplify, we kind of saw the issue in there, that it's a one-size-fits-all solution, right? So for example, if I'm a vacation intender, I might be going to Disney World, right? But I'm going to fit into the same segment as someone who's going to Vegas, right? Could you imagine if you're planning a trip to Disney World and then you get served a Bellagio ad and you're like, sorry family, we're going to Vegas instead, right? Completely different people there. So, but when you're using audience segments, you don't have access to see, well, are they searching out, Disney World or family-friendly vacations, or are they trying to go to some shows in Vegas? So what we did before we ever even started running ad campaigns was build our own data network. So we actually have a team that goes out and talks directly to different web publishers, content sites, search engine sites, and they allow us to code their sites so that we can gather that data ourselves. And the kind of data that we're collecting on those sites could be anything from search, the context actually on that site. We have our own crawling technology, and that's kind of, it goes and scans those pages and looks for what kind of keywords are on that site, as well as location and recency data. And recency is a big one too, because if you're selling cars and someone did a search, for a Honda CR-V 30 days ago, that might make sense to still get in front of that person, because that's a pretty long purchase cycle, right? But if you're selling pizzas, it doesn't make sense to target anyone more than probably 5 minutes, because they probably already ordered, right? So recency is a big part of that. So we crawl and contextually classify over 100 million pages every month. So that's what they mean by big data. That's the technology behind that. So by doing so, by having more data about all these different users and getting that directly from those sites, what this means is that we can actually create a custom audience for every advertiser. So if you're a Honda dealer and you want to sell more CR-Vs, we can target people more who are searching CR-V rather than people who are just searching auto. If you want to target people who are reading about or searching out your competitor across town, we can include their brand name in that campaign. Anyone going through an audience segment isn't able to do that. They can't customize it on a local level like we can. Also things like maybe the names of neighborhoods that you might be wanting to target, or specific products that you want to target. So this means being able to build a better audience from the start, but it also means better optimization. So when we're out there running these campaigns, serving display ads, across thousands of sites, the rest of the internet, we're also analyzing what's working and what isn't, so that we can make that campaign more and more efficient over time. And we have, some MIT grads that sit in a dark room and write algorithms that do this all day. I've seen it; it's crazy. But we also have a whole team of ad operations specialists who are also making some manual adjustments. And the ways that they're optimizing those campaigns is looking at what kind of keywords are performing better than others. What kind of domains or websites that we're serving on are performing better? Are there certain parts of the day that this campaign is performing better? Let's serve more ads during that part of the day. Also creative. So if you have multiple ads running, we can find out, hey, this message is resonating a lot better. Let's serve more ads like that. And we can actually report on that information too. And then also things like geography, the recency. So we can kind of find out, well, after 2 weeks, after 2 weeks of someone doing that search, it doesn't make sense to serve an ad for them anymore. But after a week, that's still relevant to them. And also device type, browser, and operating system. So not only are we able to make a much more customized audience for every advertiser, we're also able to optimize it a lot better because we have that specific keyword data, more data about that actual user. It's not going through a third-party segment. So we can also learn from that too. So for example, we had an auto dealer who was wanting to sell more minivans, targeting moms, and before that's what he could do is target moms, right? But what we found is that actually users who were searching the keyword car seat was performing really well for them as well in their campaign. And that makes sense. It wasn't just people shopping for a new minivan, right? But someone who's shopping for a car seat, they might determine like, hey, we might not have another kid here in another year. Then this car's not going to work out at all. Maybe we should be shopping for a minivan instead. So more access to find out more information about who your target audience is as well. And you might be running some display campaigns with Google, for example, through search engine marketing. But the advantage of a DSP is that we have access to virtually unlimited inventory. So these are what are called ad exchanges, and they're kind of like an auction house for ad inventory out there, right? So Google has their own ad exchange. Yahoo has their own ad exchange. It's called Right Media, which you can see there. And all those ads that you see on Facebook, those are part of the Facebook ad exchange. So if you're using Google, just going through Google, you don't have the same targeting capabilities, but you also don't have the access to this much inventory too. You're not going to be able to serve those retargeting ads on Facebook as well. So we're on over 14 exchanges, so more inventory means more opportunity to get in front of your potential customers. And on top of that, you can see we do it over display, banner ads, as well as video, as well as tablets, mobile phones, and social media.
Ken,
Yeah.
For that, can you explain that a little bit more? And I'll just use the example that I'm maybe I'm a hunting guide and I'm trying to sell hunts, duck hunting, and I'm doing it on Google AdWords, and we're targeting, duck hunting, and it's all going out to, and I'm buying 100,000 impressions a month on Google AdWords, so what's the advantage if I'm getting 100,000 ads on Google that are targeted towards duck hunters by some manner, shape, or form? What's the advantage of going through you guys where I'm now able to have it on more exchanges than just the Google?
Right. So one thing about the Google exchange is that that's also where the most advertisers are. So you have a limited amount of supply on one exchange, and if you have more advertisers in there, there's probably a lot more competition. So you can end up paying a little bit more to actually, get in front of those users. Whereas by having more access to more inventory, we can say, you know what, we're finding even, more efficient inventory over here on Yahoo Exchange, on Right Media, or over here on App Nexus, or on, the Facebook exchange is performing way better. Let's shift more of those dollars over there. Mm-hmm. So by being on one exchange, you're basically limited to one set of rules, if you will. While being on multiple, you can kind of go outside and find pockets of more, cost-efficient inventory across more websites. And there's typically less competition that way too.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, very much so.
Any other questions at this point about how it all works? I know that, it's a little bit more technical than most people want to get into, but all right. Now, I've heard this, I've been doing this for like 6 years, and I hear this all the time, when we start talking about display banner ads, and that question, does anyone actually click on those ads, right? And I'll be the first to admit that I don't even, right? What I do is I'll open up a new tab, and I'll go directly to that site, or I might start doing some searches on it, and it might not even be right away. It could be the next day or a little bit later. So, the average response rate, according to Google, on search engine marketing is about 2%, that click-through rate, right? Whereas display advertising, it's actually around 0.04. Ours is about 0.07, because it's quite a bit more targeted there. So, but that's a huge difference in click-through rate, right? 2% versus 0.07. So why is the click-through rate there so much different? Well, here's an example. A woman looking at a phone book, right? What's she likely going to do next? Make a call to someone, right? That's really the only logical thing you can do when you're looking at a phone book. No one looks at them for fun. Most people don't even look at them anymore. So what else are you going to do with that, right? It's a form of directional advertising. The whole point of the phone book is to get you to go somewhere else, right? To get you to call someone. No different on the search engine though, right? The whole point of a search engine is to get you to another website. The only really logical thing you're going to do on this page is click and end up at a different site, right? So for search engine marketing, for directional advertising, that click, that's an okay way to judge the performance of that campaign. But typically when you leave this site, you're not going to remember all those other links that you saw on here, right? Whereas in a case of a display ad, here I might be reading about Jeep Wrangler power folding top kits. But if I have a kid who's also having a toothache, or I'm interested in their dental hygiene, then this ad for Happy Smiles of pediatric dentistry is going to make a lot of sense for me. Am I going to click on that ad right away? Who knows? Probably not, right? I'm here to read content about Jeep Wrangler, but I know that Happy Smiles isn't here in town, so I might actually open up a new tab and go to their website. Or 2 days later, when my kid has a toothache, then I might think, oh, I saw that ad for Happy Smiles. We should give them a call. So again, once you leave this page, you're not typically going to remember any of these. The whole point is to get you to do a click, right? It's directional advertising. Display is really a form of creative advertising. It's meant to leave an impact with you, whether or not you actually interact with it right away. Remember earlier when I was going through some of the retargeting examples for myself? Does anyone remember any of the ads that we looked at on there? Sheraton, right? So you remember those, Target, exactly. So that's because it's a different type of advertising there. So if people aren't clicking on the ads, how do we know if it's working or not? Right? That's the big question. How do we know if it's working if you're not actually even clicking on it? Well, here are some stats from both Online Publisher Association as well as Comscore. So audiences who are just exposed to display advertising are more engaged with advertiser sites, they're staying longer on there, and they're visiting more pages because they're already familiar with that brand before they get there, right? 1 in 5 users exposed to display advertising will actually conduct a related search for that advertised brand. So they see, Sheraton Hotels or Sun Valley, and then instead of clicking on it, 1 in 5 are actually going to go and do a search for Sun Valley. On top of that, display can increase brand searches by up to 38% after only 4 weeks of exposure. So really, there are clicks that happen, but the point here is that that's just the tip of the iceberg of what your display campaign is actually doing, right? And targeted display actually works hand in hand with search. When you're running both and combined, you're going to see more searches, and your display ads are probably going to get clicked on more often too. And so how do we track these kind of metrics though if they're not actually clicking on that ad? And that's through looking at your web analytics. So when you're, before running a display campaign, how much website traffic are you getting currently? Even if you're doing search, in total, how many unique visitors are you getting to your site? How many brand searches are people doing? Are people actually finding you doing a look directly for your brand, or are they having to find you through some other ancillary keywords? Then obviously, just like any type of advertising, tracking phone calls and increased sales there too. But also the quality of the traffic. So looking at things such as bounce rates. Are people coming to the site and then leaving right away? How much time are they actually spending on that site, and how many pages are they actually looking into? These are all metrics that are saying that this person is really interested in what you have to sell, right? And we know that typically they're going to be on your site and know everything about you before they even call you. You guys find that happening more and more these days? Like people walking into an auto dealer, they already know what kind of car they're buying. They already know what the price is probably going to be too. They're just looking to make the purchase. So these are the type of metrics that we can actually look at to know that we're hitting the right audience and that they're coming in and actually engaging with the brand. So just because it's online doesn't mean you can track every part of it, especially with display advertising.
Do you have conversion tracking?
Yes, yep, we can do conversion tracking. There's certain types of conversion tracking, like if you're doing like a lead form, hardly anyone ever goes on and actually fills out lead forms. So it's typically better to look at things such as, we can look at specific key pages like your contact us page. So that means that if they got to that contact us page, they're probably looking to give you a phone call. We can optimize towards that too. But yeah, that is an option out there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any studies that show that this type of advertising where you're putting that little name in there, your little spot, that those people are considered more successful or that they're more educated, the person that's doing that? Because other people are not. So let's just say you have a lot of competition
Right.
and my name keeps popping up and popping up. Is there any studies that psychologically people think, oh, she's more with it, or or more educated, more credibility things? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I don't know. I think that most people just see those top 3 listings and that's all they ever look at.
Yeah, because you would think that they might either go, oh yeah, it's a used car salesman. I don't, keep seeing their name.
Right.
I think intuitively, I don't know that there's any research too, but I think if you think about your own behavior, right? If you see somebody's ad a lot, whether it's on TV or whether it's online, I think in my behavior is well, they're perhaps more successful.
Right.
Like they're not going to be, either they have a lot of money that came from somewhere, or they're really successful, and I want to go to that successful real estate broker or whatever.
That's what display is meant to do, is put your ad out there no matter where they are. Right. To that person, it seems like you're everywhere.
Right.
When in reality, you're more so kind of following them around and periodically saying, hey, remember us.
Yeah.
And that way, when even if they're not searching for you right now, when they're ready to buy you, that brand relevance is still there. So something we get asked a lot too.
Quick question. How do you manage the effective versus stalking?
Frequency capping.
Okay.
Right.
Because I know, I see it all the time, and I'm like, I don't want to go there. I'm annoyed.
Yeah, that can happen. And that's what we look at is frequency capping, which is how many times you serve an ad to that person in a given time period.
Okay.
And that's something that our system will actually optimize to and find out how much is too much. Where is that line?
Okay.
On that question of frequency capping, that's also speaking to cookies based, right? Because you're chasing their cookies. So what happens when people clear that out so they stop being harassed?
Right.
Now what? You start over at square one, and if I don't visit your site, I don't get any more messages from you?
Good question. A lot of technology is built based off of cookies. Ours is not. Cookies are a part of it, but we actually have a unique user ID for every user out there that's tied to your device ID, and also some things like IP address and a few other things too. So it's not completely dependent on cookies.
Okay.
But you're right, there is a lot of retargeting technology is based purely on cookies. So we kind of joke that the only way to get rid of our ads is you have to throw your laptop in the river. So. But great question. Going to go through some case studies here as well. So this one is from a law office, and they had a great local reputation, been in the market for years, and never really had an issue, never had to do any sort of advertising. They weren't doing search, they weren't doing any sort of paid advertising, they were just relying completely on word of mouth. But competition started moving in, and it made it really hard for him to continue acquiring new clients because there was a lot of other options in town, and people were actually spending money, and he didn't know what to do there. So he agreed to doing a site retargeting campaign to get back in front of people who have visited the site, but also search retargeting to get in front of people who are looking for his services, right? And because he was doing no other type of advertising, no other paid form media, he saw an increase of 166 leads in the first 2 months. So he could attribute, at least almost all of those to this kind of targeted display that he was doing. Again, that one's about overcoming increasing competition, how to keep in front of people as well as find new people who are searching for you. This example is from a local furniture store. So they wanted to increase their store traffic. I mean, obviously the bottom line is sales, right? But there's some other metrics you can look at too to see if an ad campaign is working, and that's things like store traffic. If you're getting a lot of traffic and not as many sales, maybe there's something wrong with your store, right? That's not the advertiser's fault, though. So they were doing a combination of site retargeting, search targeting, contextual targeting to find people who are either searching for furniture-related items, but also their competitors' brand names, right? Because the furniture industry is pretty competitive, just like the auto industry. So what they were looking for is above average visits to their website, and also saw a huge increase to their in-store foot traffic. So a point about targeting his competitor names. If you're familiar with search engine marketing, you can't do that on search engine marketing. You're not supposed to target your competitors' brand names. Google will actually lower your quality score and make your rankings go down if you're doing that. It's not the same on search retargeting though with display ads, because you're not competing for that search engine results page, right? You're not competing for that top 3 spot with them. You're getting back in front of them as they leave that site. And then the last example here I've got, which I like, is because this is from the customer perspective. So I'll let you go through and read this. So it's one impression, right? And this time he actually did click on it and found out that this location is right next to his daughter's dance studio, and he goes in there and spends $4,300, over $4,300, right? So when we're talking about tracking the success of a campaign like this, he might have said, oh, you only got me 1 click. Well, that click could lead to $4,300 in sales. If it's targeted to the right audience, and it's the right message and the right timing, that makes the world of difference, right? Going to wrap this up. It's about 20 to the hour with 5 strategies for running successful targeted display campaigns. First one is blending tactics, right? So don't go out and just run a site retargeting campaign, because then again, all you're doing is getting back in front of people who've already been to your site, and they're either going to buy from you or they never will. And eventually, you're just continually serving ads there. You need strategies that also build new users, right? Fill upper funnel things. So people are either searching for keywords that are related to what you're selling, or even just reading about it. That helps build up that funnel, so that then you're site retargeting to them, and once they're ready to buy, now you're back in front of them. Second one, make an impact. A lot of advertisers they'll want to dip their toes into this, and then they'll expect that it's going to increase their sales like crazy. Reality is that, like I said before, there's a lot of advertising out there, especially online, right? Think about how many display ads that you end up seeing on a given day. But if you've been retargeted to, you know that it works. You've seen those ads; they're relevant to you. So it's something you want to be able to invest in, so that it's actually going to make an impact to your business, so you can actually see that increase in sales. Committing to at least 3 months. A couple reasons for that. With any type of brand advertising, it does take a little bit of time for things to build up, right? First time you see a commercial on TV or the radio or in a newspaper, you may not remember it right away, but it's that second, third, fourth, fifth time that you hear it, now you start recognizing it, remembering it, right? The other reason for committing to at least 3 months is that optimization that I was talking about. So, when we launch a campaign, we set it up, it's not set in stone right there. Just like with a search campaign. You have to kind of let it gather data, find out what's working, what isn't, and make those optimizations to make it as efficient as possible. And that can take a little bit of time. Fourth, have great creative. I know the team at KTVZ can help with that. I've seen what they produce, and it actually is very, very good creative. And I always like to have multiple themes as well. So if you have 3 or 4 different calls to action that you want to try out, or different messaging that you want to use, rotate those, because we can optimize that and find out and show you this messaging is working better than this one. And maybe that's something that you want to incorporate in all your messaging. And lastly, measure appropriately. Because again, display is not about the click-through rate. You're going to be looking at your overall web analytics, so unique visitors to the site, how much time are they spending on the site, how many pages are they looking at, and then obviously that hopefully leads to more calls, more in-store traffic, and more sales too. And that's about it. Any other questions? Yep.
So if I'm interviewing somebody to help me with this advertising, can you give me 3 items that would be important for me to ask that they knew so I would know their credibility?
Right. I would ask, who exactly are you targeting? Right? Because they might say, yeah, we're going to target moms or some sort of behavioral targeting. And it's like, well, is it because they searched a keyword? Is it because they visited a site? Right? And they might, again, go back to, that's our secret sauce, right? Because it's a black box that they're buying from someone else through a third party. So who you're exactly targeting, what they can report on.
What do they what?
What they can report on.
Measure.
Right, exactly. You'll find that some companies will say, yeah, we're doing all this, and then they'll just give you a report that says, here's how many impressions and clicks you got, but it doesn't actually show you, this many for site retargeting, this many for search retargeting, this many for contextual targeting, and they might just be blasting it out to anyone, and then just showing you your total impression volume. And then lastly, I would also say that transparency too. Again, on which keywords are actually working better, which sites are my ads being served on, questions like that. Anyone else?
Cost. How do you compare to Google?
That's not a question for me.
Oh, okay.
For a small
It's a
business
question
like
for me,
Ben,
though.
what would you advise put into like a monthly budget for this?
Right, and that's something that we've talked to KTVZ about. And, it depends on your business, obviously. If you've got one location and you're a ophthalmologist, then 100,000 impressions a month might be pretty strong for you. If you're an auto dealer, though, there's a lot more competition in town. You've got more locations, things like that. Then you're going to want to raise that up. But I would probably start around 100,000 impressions a month. And that might seem like a lot, but again, there's a lot of ads online, and you got to be able. That's why I said earlier, make a big impact. So you got to be able to do enough to kind of break through all that noise too. Obviously, it works a lot better when they're very targeted and really relevant to you, but you still want to be able to make a big impact.
What CPM should people expect to pay?
We see anywhere from $10 and up. I mean, it kind of depends on the targeting again. Right? Because if they tell you that they're doing all this, but they won't break it out and show you how targeted that they're getting, they might just be targeting to anyone and paying dirt cheap and charging you more too. So being able to see exactly what you're paying for is probably more important than going for the lowest CPM. Because again, more targeting typically means that the CPM is going to go higher.
Any other questions?
I have one more, sorry. Are there any companies that would manage all of your, I like to call it electronic advertising? So if you've already have contracts with other websites, and then they can come in and help you maybe set up a whole new, not a whole new, but add on some advertising and then manage all of that for you? And I never saw the TV
KTVZ is part of MPG Co. And that's who Simpli.fi has a partnership with too. So they've got a lot of digital expertise because they understand that that's a huge part of where media is going, and it goes hand in hand with television too. Right. A lot of people will get their news from the television from KTVZ.com, for example, or they're at home and they're watching the news and they're also on their iPad and doing everything online too. So it's through that kind of partnership with companies like KTVZ that we can provide this technology to them as well.
Nice
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
So I want to thank you all for coming. Can you, before you leave, take just a couple minutes inside your programs as an evaluation? If you wouldn't mind filling that out. And also at the end of the evaluation, we are actually starting to plan for 2015. So we really do look to our members for ideas, suggestions, speakers, topics. So please feel free.
Yeah, who serves the
to fill that in for us.
analytics? Do you
And thank you
guys
all for
serve the
coming.
analytics? And it can be monitored by,
And also, if you have any more questions about
Through the
what we're
web.
doing on this
Yeah,
end,
I mean, we'll chat with him and more.
Laura is our main contact at KTVZ. We want to get in touch with. So
My name's
if you don't already know her.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. So thank you again for that.
It got warm in here quick. Oh, I bet.
pumping out your,
Kent, we had one other question over here, and it's
Yeah.
just about serving the analytics and.
how that's all monitored. Do you serve it out to the customers, or do they, or?
Are you talking about your own site analytics?
Yeah.
That's typically something you would have access to, the web analytics.
Well, are you asking about analytics of time spent on your site, or analytics of tracking the ads that?
Tracking the ads and, the conversion pixels, or is that
Right.
something that you're gonna?
Yes, that's something that Laura and her team would be able to help you with as well. Because a lot of times people have their website up, but they don't know how to go analyze web analytics as well.
Yeah.
She understands that very well.
You have the ability to say it. I was going to say, if a user is gone, so this, I guess this is what I asked. Say I've been looking for,
Oh, okay.
How long have you been with them?
We've had, it was shortly after you and I first met. So that was
my guess.
yeah, because we had that was not part of our original discussions and stuff like that. So that was like right during the start of fishing season, like April, got that big smallmouth, so whenever that was. So we probably started with these guys a month after that. And we have several local customers now one of the ones that Brian directly involved with is we have some parts of it is successful, some we're based here. The next steps, I guess, is trying to, again, this is what I wanted to talk to you about at Tether. This technology is now available for us, and we think we have a very good complement on how to deliver your ads to people that are, again, been to your website, but now are somewhere else. They've searched your competitor's website, they've searched fishing rod wraps or accessories or fishing nets or anything, and then they may be on they may be a fisherman and they've searched all that stuff, and now we have the ability to deliver your advertising to them during all their other web activity on sites that may have nothing to do with fishing. It may be a
I mean, that's what I just did with Google. They did rebranding, remarketing, so every customer that went
to your site.
Yeah.
So that's site retargeting. So what they're doing is they found, okay, they've been to Steve's site, now that
they did a multi-layer where they have keyword, sites, everything. But the main issue is, okay, people are ordering and I get a click-through rate that's really high, and I get a purchase rate that's better than the national average. But the average purchase is so small that I can't afford the advertising until I get that average purchase up. So I have a $300 net coming out. Plug in a few other things so I can get the average spend up to $80 a month. And then it's affordable, then it's doable. But until I have that, I've got a $5 item.
Right. You gotta sell a lot of $5 items.
For a guy to, spend $100 on $5, that's a lot of shit. My shit.
Right. And you were telling me you were spending like $50 a day in Google AdWords or something like that. Or
total spend was like $8,000 over a 3-month period. And I spent $8,000 to make $3,000, which eventually put me out of business.
Right.
So, you put it on pause,
And so part of my question is, again, it's like, when I asked him that, I was thinking of you, I was going, okay, so what's the advantage?
I get it. I mean, I can see what the advantage is if it comes in the form of cost and working with somebody local instead of a Google team that's in Michigan. I get that part. Right. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same.
What do you know how many impressions you got for your 8,000?
I could look it up, but they were bringing it.
Right.
Just believe me, it was there was nothing wrong with anything that I did or that they did or with the entire campaign, other than the spend.
The spend. You have to sell.
I went from 3,500, 5,000 visits a month without them to 10,000, 15,000 visits a month with
them. Right. So you're getting site to your traffic. You're getting people. It's just at this point part of it.
I can't catch up to the spend with
the product line that you have, or the price point of the items that you're selling,
I can never get there where I'm at right now.
So you need to introduce not necessarily more customers, but you need to introduce.
Customers are fine. I need more product. Which is a pretty easy solution, but it takes a little bit of time. I mean, we're on our 7th month.